Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining the second part of the CoBRA talk. There's a lot of different things happening with CMS1, with us moving to ARC. And so this, all the new announcements will have an effect on the CoBRA project, because the first phase of the CoBRA, actually both phase 1 and 2 were very specific to dealing with how we have to work with method. And once we completely move off of method, we're probably not going to need a lot of this. So we may actually not follow up with the second phase, and I'll talk about that when we get there. I'm going to start sharing my screen. All right. And I need to make sure that my screen is on the, so that YouTube viewers can see it as well. All right, can everyone see my screen?
Yep, I can see it.
Okay, awesome. So last time I actually talked about the different phases of the project and where we're going and what we have, and I demoed a few command line options, and then I stopped just before I talk about branching strategies. Now, when it comes to branching strategies, there are different branching strategies, but the most standard ones, I think we can adopt that and continue using that strategy even when we move over to ARC. But we can talk about that in a bit. I do want to go back to this last bit that I talked about last time, the developing with the watch task, and I do want to demo something with that. So if you, just as a refresher, I'm going to do is I'm going to move all these outside the view and make one of them bigger so that it's easier for everyone to see. So here's my command line. All right. And this is going to be my watch task for developing. So basically, as a refresher, what this does is it watches your method files, and the changes you make will push, lock, and publish automatically every changes that you make locally and push it into Eclipse. So let's take a look at an example. And all right, so I'm going to all right, so here is a demo file, and I'll show you the path. So this is located at portal config content demo. So it's under demo.jpt. And the equivalent file in Eclipse, I'll bring it in and I'll show you where that file also lives. So here is the dev environment, and this is our CoBRA environment. And that's where that file lives. All right, so here's our watch task. So I'm going to go ahead and edit that file. So I save, detected, and it's pushed to remote and published automatically. And let's go and confirm. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, and you can notice that the lock stays on that. So when you open the file, you see that my change was, I misspelled my own name. My change is up and pushed out. Now, I'm going to ask Carlos. Carlos is here as well, right? Carlos, are you here as well?
Yep.
Hey, Carlos. So can you go to this path? I'm going to send you the path. I'll send it in the chat. And go there and change a random JPT file.
Any that I want?
Yeah, just under, as long as it's under CoBRA test. All right, so we can see in Eclipse that he changed demo to, oh, sorry. All right, I do need to run something in the background. All right, so, he made a change to JPT2. And I'm assuming that's what you said. It is what it isn't, right?
That is correct.
All right. So now let's go back to the watch task. I did forget to run the update refresher earlier, but that should not be a problem.
Mason, so are we going to be notified in our local window here that someone's made a change via method?
Yeah, we should get notified.
Cool. Okay.
But I actually forgot to run the server. So when Carlos was modifying it, what I'm gonna do,
do you want me to modify the file again?
I just restarted the task, the watch task. But yeah, if you could go ahead and make another change to the file, as I have the server running in the back. Okay, so all right, so he just made a change to demo 2. Now, the demo 2 change will be picked up by the server from the back end. Actually, you know what? Can you make a change to frameset.jpt?
Sure thing. Alrighty.
All right, so that change was picked up by the server just now, and it'll be picked up by the watch here. So here it says that Carlos modified file frameset.jpt, and then it updates it locally. So now if I go to frameset.jpt, I'll see the change that he made, which I'm assuming is this one. It goes woo, right?
Yep.
All right. So what happens is that there is a server that I'll be setting up on in Jenkins as a cron. It's going to run as a cron job. What it does is it runs every, I think, 5 seconds, and it checks the status of the files and the changes that were made, and then it records them. And then every change that you make will show up and be picked up by the watch task that you're working on. So as long as you're running the watch task, the changes that others make should be able to have it updated locally as you're working on your own files.
So Mason, you might have told us this last time. The JPTs, they're not in a GitHub repo, right?
They are, and so from last time, what I went through was how to bring in the current SVN commits that we have into GitHub.
Okay.
Set them up as a GitHub repo. So this CM CoBRA test that I'm demoing on, this is similar to what you would have as, say, the free sites or paid sites, TV, radio repos.
So when you're notified of Carlos's JPT change, what does that mean in relationship to your local GitHub branch?
Well, these are just changes to the files. As long as you don't commit anything, you won't be affecting anything with GitHub. GitHub is where you commit your changes, right?
So if Carlos's change to the JPT was just pulled down to your local branch folder,
right,
when you get ready to commit, how does that work?
So when you get ready to commit, you'll see, so let me close this session.
Okay.
And then I do git status, right?
Yeah.
So these are the changes that, this is a change that I made myself, and this is a change that Carlos made just now.
Okay.
So when you're committing your changes, you decide what you change you commit.
Okay.
And the changes that other people commit, you can just leave them out, let other people commit those changes.
Right.
What this means that, so if you remember the fact that we have a shared working environment, what that means is that if somebody makes a change that shows up in your local instance as you're working, that's a shared space. So their changes will show up as artifacts in your environment. It's up to you to commit them or ignore them. But you working on your own files, you'll be committing your own files. You don't have to commit other people's files.
But if we don't run the part of this that downloads someone else's commits, I guess, is that possible to not download their commits to your local environment?
Yeah, you can choose not to. You can even
okay, cool.
You can even get check out, like reset these changes that they make locally, because as long as you don't commit over them, which is a different topic that I'll discuss.
Okay.
If you don't need other people's changes, files in your local environment, you can ignore them. You can, I don't know, reset them. You can do whatever you want to them, as long as you don't commit those. As long as you don't commit any new changes that you don't intend to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
But I'm going to run an example, actually, a very quick example on making some changes. So let's go back. And by the way, part of the, with the watch meth script, when you have some files locked, let's say, let's go back and modify this. So I'm going to modify this frame set file and say delete a couple of the O's there and save. So let this push out that file. And then I'll go and modify another file. Let's go back and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to modify somewhere under something under layouts. So template 2. All right. So when I close my my instance, what it does is it unlocks the files that you changed, that you locked. Now, what I'm going to do is actually I'm going to go through a process of making changes, creating a pull request, and promoting that change to higher environments. So let's go back to the slides. And before I do that, I want to talk about the branching strategies. So branching and promotion strategies. So first of all, we're going to start with having branches, separate branches for each environment: dev, QA, staging, and prod. And then everybody will have their own feature branch as they work on branching off of dev. The starting points from this is just basic branching strategies for teams that use Git. And we're going to do a slight modification of this one. So basically what this is that we have the main develop branch, right? And then we have the master branch, which is the stable branch. When you start working, first you do a pull from develop to your local repo. You create a branch, a feature branch. You make changes to it. After you branch out, you make changes to it, and then you merge it back into develop. In our case, including when we have GitHub, in a GitHub workflow, branching back would be through a pull request with approved reviews. And then when you're ready to promote your code, you merge those changes into a release branch. And several people can really merge their changes into a release branch. And then when the release branch is ready to be released, it is merged into the master branch and it's tagged. So this is just a basic Git branching strategy that I think is probably the most basic one. There are different ones out there. There are ones that have to do with rebasing. I think we used that with Medley back in the day, and so on. So what I'm proposing is something that is that kind of it's similar to this standard base strategy, but it takes into account the fact that we have shared environments. So let's go and take a look at this and how it works. So here are, this is on this side is the EOMDB, and these are the environments: dev, QA, staging, and prod. And then this is a Git in GitHub. So for each one, there will be a branch that represents that environment. The changes that we make to the branches will be pushing those changes back into the EOMDB so that they're synchronized, so that they don't fall out of sync. So basically, you start from dev, you pull in, make sure you have the latest dev, and in order to start work on a ticket, you create a new feature branch. You can call it whatever. We don't have a standard yet, but we can decide on one together. So you create a branch. You make commits to it, and as you're making changes, keep in mind that those changes are being pushed into the dev environment at the same time. It's kind of like when you're working in Eclipse. As you make changes, the changes will be in the shared space. When you're ready, you create a pull request. There's code reviews, maybe more commits, and then when you're ready, you merge that change back into the dev branch. Now, when you're ready to promote your code, code promotion happens through pull requests. So you don't promote direct commits like we do today with SVN. What you do instead is what you do is you take the same branch, and you take that same branch that you create your pull request with, and then you just merge that branch into the target's environments. So you can promote a pull request from dev to QA. You can promote a pull request from dev to staging. But what you notice is that when you go from staging to prod, you don't directly promote pull requests directly into prod. What happens is that when we're ready to promote a set of changes, when we're ready to release them, we deploy them by just merging the staging at that point into prod and then tagging it. And that's to make sure that we don't directly move code that's not part of a release into prod. So that keeps prod separate from the rest of the branches. Now, the question may come up with which one is a stable branch? Well, obviously the prod is a stable branch, but when we start work, we'll be branching off of dev. And that's actually something similar in this setup as well. Here also, there's a develop branch, and when new work needs to start, you can branch off of dev. This is something with methods specifically that we have to deal with, because if we were to branch off of prod, then that would mean that there are a lot of uncommitted changes in dev, as well as all the committed changes in dev that are there as you're working, because it's a shared workspace, but you won't have those commits in your local branch to take a look at to see what changes are there. So it's easier with method. It's easier to branch off of dev and start working on from dev. And this really difficulty comes from the fact that we're working with shared environments. If we were working with isolated environments, which I'm hoping that Arc will provide us, and we won't have to deal with shared workspace anymore, then it would make a lot of sense to start work by branching off of the stable branch, because that way you have your isolated work and other people's work don't affect you. But in this case, when you branch off of the dev environments, you at least have you can at least see the changes that other people have been making in the shared workspace. Let's go back to the slide. All right, so now I'm going to show demo some of the promotion tools with the workflow in GitHub workflow. Pull requests, code reviews, code owners is something that GitHub provides, and I'll show you how that works. and then we'll promote pull requests to a higher environment and then sync with the EO and DB. And I'll show all that, how all that works. So let's go ahead and let's make some changes. So let's get checkout branch, and let's call it Jira. Let's call it demo feature. Right. So there are some changes here, and we're going to commit some of those changes. So let's commit. Actually, let me do a status first, and then let's add. It's committed. And then let's add frame set. And finally, let's add template 2. And we're going to ignore demo because we're going to say that that change came from someone else, so we're not ready to commit that one. All right, so let's take a look at our branch. So this is where we started off, commit 1, 2, 3. All right, so now I'm ready to create a pull request. So what I do is I go grunt PR, and first we're going to get an error saying that title is required. So I need to give a title to my pull request. So PR demo. First, what it does is you should always make sure that before you create a pull request, it makes sense. You actually need to push your changes to the remote. Otherwise, you're not going to have a pull request. So it does that automatically. And then what it does is it creates a new pull request in GitHub and gives you a link to that pull request. So let's go take a look at the pull request. Now, what you notice is, so this is our pull request. What you notice is reviewers are automatically assigned to this. And if you hold your mouse over here, it says that Surendra is a code owner. And you also see that Medni is also a code owner. And basically the way this works is setting up code owners. And I'll show you what that is. So this is the basic, the host repo, like the NP paid or NP free, or the different repos for radio and TV. You notice that there's a file here, code owners, and this is a GitHub file. When you click on the file, you'll notice that there is syntax very similar to git ignore. Basically what it is that you set certain types of files and you set up code owners for that file. So for example, here I've said that all JPT files need to be reviewed by Medni. All JS files need to be reviewed by myself and Krishna, for example. And anything under the folder's layouts needs to be reviewed by Surendra. And basically, when you have this file at the base of your repo, every time you create a pull request, it automatically notifies the people that need to be reviewed, or need to review the pull request. Now, right now, these people aren't required to approve the code, the pull request, but that can also be set up under settings. So when you go to settings and you do you protect a branch, let's say dev, then you can set up protect this branch, and you can say require pull request before merging. You set that. You can decide how many reviews, how many approvals are needed before it can be merged. And you can also say that require review from code owners. What it does is when you check this, it requires an approved review from the code owner. So basically, if I check this and save this, what happens is that this pull request cannot be merged unless Surendra and Medni approve this pull request. So this is something cool that we can actually use with, it's not related to method. We can continue using it with Arc. And we actually had discussions about code owners in the past. And requiring code reviews and approvals from code owners on the different parts of the code base. And I think this will be very useful to have. All right, so let's go back to our pull request. Now, what I want to do is now I want to promote this pull request over to the QA branch, right? So what I do is I'll go grunt promote, and I'll give the PR number, which is 16. Now I'm doing this on purpose before merging it, just to show you what is required before you can promote a code. So basically what happens, first, you get an error saying target environment is required as the first argument. So even though with most of the other commands like grunt push, grunt pull, grunt lock, and all those other ones, the default environment is dev. When you're promoting, there's no longer a default, so you need to specifically specify where you want to promote. So here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass QA as the first argument here. Again, we're going to see another error, and this one is saying that current branch is demo feature. Please check out QA before continuing. So I'm going to go check out QA, right? And I'm gonna pass in actually a PR that doesn't exist, just to show you what happens when you do that. So here you get an error saying that failed to verify pull request not found. So PR 17 does not exist. And finally, the last error that we're going to get, because we have not merged the pull request. So you can't promote a pull request that has not been approved and has not been merged yet. So pull request is not merged, please merge once approved. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to merge this pull request. Now what I do is I run the same command. So what it does first is it pulls the QA, make sure you have the latest QA. And then what it does is it does a merge of the same branch with a no fast forward. And the reason I do that, I have that set up there, is because we need to be able to push back, sync up the changes back with the EOMDB, we need to always know what files were changed. Otherwise, you'll have to do a full push of all the files, and which is not something that we want to do with bigger repos like the free sites. A merge commit can always tell you what changed in the branch that's being merged. A fast forward will actually add the branch directly to the tip of the current branch. So you don't exactly know where your branch became part of, where it diverged and where it became part of the current branch that you're merging into. So when you do a merge commit, no fast forward here, as I'm doing here, it merges this branch into the QA branch with a merge commit. So if I do a graph of the commits, what you notice is this, that it becomes a separate branch and it's merged back in. If I did it with a fast forward, then this would be a straight up addition to the current branch. And only the commit message would tell me where the branch started. So now with the commits merge, I can always tell what files were changed from the main branch. So now we have our code promoted to QA. Now, there's a step that you need to also follow up on. And what that is you have GitHub updated, right? So you have your changes merged into GitHub, but the QA EOMDB is still not synced up with now the new changes. And for that, in order to sync that up, you type grunt push sync QA, and you pass in the pull request number that you originally promoted. What this does, it looks at the PR, it asks the GitHub what files were changed as part of that pull request. And what it does is it pushes those files into the EOMDB. So the files that I changed are these, the 3 commits that I made, and now they're pushed to the EOMDB in the QA environment. And so you pass the QA environment as the first argument, just like with promotion. So now if I go back to the EOMDB in Eclipse, just to confirm that, in the QA environment, and open up to see the changes that I promoted. You notice that the last change that I made is here for demo 2. And let's check out frame set. And that's 3 O's, the woo with 3 O's, the last change that I made to frame set, and so on. And then finally, what it does is it pushes origin to QA, because the promotion that you did, if you don't push your changes to GitHub, then no one else will see it. So it does that final step to make sure that everything is synced up, EOMDB with GitHub as well. So let me go back to the diagram. So this is the diagram that represents that other stage that I just discussed. So let me just zoom in. What's the best way to zoom in here? Okay, so here is what we just did. So here's the dev branch. So this is the feature A. We merge it into the QA branch. Then we pull it. We get the list of changed files in that pull request, and then we push it back to QA. So now the QA environment is synced up with the QA branch in GitHub and your local instance. And then the same process will be can be followed for promoting to staging. And so the basic process is you first do grunt PR. Well, let me go back to the 3 steps that you need to follow once you have your code changes ready. You do a grunt PR to create a pull request. Once it's merged, you type in grunt. You change to the targets branch, for example, QA or staging. You type in grunt promote with the target and the PR number, and finally you grunt push sync the target and the PR number. And those are really the 3 steps that you need to follow to do that. I think we're a bit over time. Or are we? Let me see. Just make sure that this goes to half an hour. Yeah, no, we have time. We have time. This is scheduled for till the 30 minutes past. Now, the question comes up with what happens with when different people are modifying the same files. And let me go back to here. So let's say that you're starting development from a branch, making changes, as someone else starts branches off of here. At this point in the middle of, before you merge your works back in, when they start their branch, obviously because we're working a shared environment, the changes that this person is working on feature A will show up in feature B. And that's something that is unavoidable because of the shared workspace that we have. And that's something that we deal with today with in Eclipse and SVN. What this provides is not a way to fix that, because we really can't. It's a shared workspace. But what it does is, in code reviews, as you're merging your changes, what you get is conflicts, as well as you get a nice setup of what changes that were made, as opposed to what we have today, where you have to go on every individual file to make sure that nobody else's work is being committed as part of your deployments, and checking their individual changes, for example, seeing what changes were made, and then having to find out each file individually. Here, GitHub provides all the changes in one file, in one view, and especially the ones that you made changes, the change that you made that somebody else is working on the same file, they'll show up as conflicts. And then you have a chance of communicating with the other developers on the same file and deciding what changes need to be or can be promoted as part of your code and what changes can be promoted as part of their feature branches. So that's one nice thing that GitHub provides for us, that SVN and Eclipse makes it very, very difficult. And there have been so many times where changes had been accidentally pushed, deployed, where they were not discovered as we were doing this manually one by one. And then issues came up and we had to revert changes, go back. Here, what this provides is all the files in one view. Another thing that this provides is that when you're promoting your code, you don't have to remember what files you changed, so that when you're pushing your changes, you have to go keep a list in, I don't know, in Jira. I think what we have today is people keep a list of file changes in Jira. I don't think we have a standard. Sometimes the changes are listed in the comments. Sometimes they're listed in the description of the Jira ticket. And when you're promoting your code, you have to go one by one, SVN, updates. I don't know why SVN is not loaded on my local Eclipse. That's weird. But what happens here is that the list of changes are kept inside your list of files that were changed are kept inside your Git's pull requests, Git branch. And when you're promoting, those files will always be available to the command lines, where you can just either push them, you can publish them, you can do all that under one command line, one command in the command line. So that's another nice thing that that gives us with promoting code. So that does that. That's syncing with the EOMDB. And there are more things that can come. I don't know if they're necessary now with the CMS1. I don't know how often these are changed, but we can also move metadata. We can actually do that today. Push metadata into files into the EOMDB. And also, we can also start version controlling site environment properties. And the phase 2 part of this project was supposed to be continuous integration, code quality, complexity measurement, and assurance. And that's something that Dan has talked about. I think he is working on a proof of concept, I think, or something that is probably created already. We can include that in this project. And I think the code quality complexity, it has to do with JavaScript. So it's something that it can even go beyond method, and it can be incorporated into our future Arc setup. And also Jira integration. That's also something that can be, that's agnostic of CMS. But like I said, this is all considering the One CMS initiative, and some of this, especially the continuous integration, may not actually happen because of the way method is today. If you set up a continuous integration, the setup may be very specific to method, and we'll have to redo the setup again when we go to Arc. And besides, Arc has its own integration tools, Circle CI, and I'm not sure if it's worth going through the effort of creating a setup today with Jenkins or whatever we have, just to abandon it for Arc. So these are discussions that will come up, I guess, in the future weeks with myself, Rob. We will have probably Jesse and Medney, and we'll discuss whether these are efforts that are worth, at least for now. And that's it for now. I am actually currently working on bringing this up to some low traffic, easier repos today. One of them is TV. So TV, wired, do I have TV? Let's see. And I'll be working with Todd. And where's TV? Oh, TV doesn't have a repo, sorry. So the TV repo does not, they don't have a repo in GitHub. So I'll be setting up a repo in GitHub for them, a very basic repo. there's TV, and there's also Radio News Talk, which is a repo from the radio team that Richard told me is actually is a much lower traffic, and I want to be able to test the CoBRA plugin with these two repos. And once we are happy with how it works and the branching and promotion strategies, then we can bring them into other repos like the paid sites and the free sites. The free sites is currently the highest traffic. There's a lot more. I think the most amount of development is happening on the free sites. With the news that we have today about ARC and the sites becoming one, I'm not sure if there's going to be a lot of traffic on the paid sites. It's probably not going to happen. There's not going to be a lot of traffic. So I think the paid sites will probably be a good idea for testing environments for the CoBRA plugin. But that's it. Are there any questions, any concerns?
Yeah, that was going to be my question. Were you going to continue to test this during the next 6 weeks? It sounds like you're going to just continue to move forward with it in the testing while we're analyzing the 6-week period with ARC.
Yeah. I think a lot of this, as it happens, is it really we do need to keep an eye out what happens with ARC. I have a feeling that major development on the method sites is going to be reduced by a lot. So I think the mobile first is probably going to be the last major initiative that we do with method, and I think that helps out with picking different repos for testing this out. But I'm not 100% sure how long we're going to be on method before we move on to ARC. But there are a few things that I'm hoping that we can stop having to deal with until we get to fully 100% on ARC. And that is having to work with SVN. I really hope that we can stop dealing with SVN and move our workflow into Git and GitHub, because we're going to continue our work in Git and GitHub when we move on to ARC. The branching strategies, pull requests, code reviews, all of that is going to stay with us. And starting with that now, I think is probably a good idea to for us to get used to workflows on even iron out some kinks in our flow, creating pull requests, setting up code ownership and all that. And some of the other stuff I think that Dan was talking about with code complexity and code quality is also, I think, worth spending time on and setting up, because that's also going to transfer over to ARC. So yeah, Susan, I think within the next 6 weeks, we'll find out a lot more with what needs to be done, what not. If we start moving to ARC, like, I don't know, at the end of the 6 weeks, I think that'd be great. I think that'd be really, really great. As the sooner we start, the better. But if we're going to be sticking around on method and still making changes to the code base, I think the CoBRA stuff will probably ease some of the pains that we have today. Just recently, we had a release, I think, with the mobile first, where I think one file was not promoted or was not published. And that happens because of the fact that it's so manual. You have to go through each file individually. If we can have a list of files, pass it on to a command line, and it does it automatically, I think that makes life a lot easier. I wish we had this a year or 2 years ago. If we could have this so that we didn't have to go through so much pain that we had to go through in the past 2 years, having to deal with SVN in method. But
right. In the reviewer, setting up reviewers that have to approve a pull request, I think is excellent. Boy, that's something we could have been doing for a long time and probably should have been. Do you know, Mason, if you can assign for a reviewer, like if we decide to make those a requirement, like the reviewer has to approve it, can you set that reviewer on a folder level?
You can do it any level you want. So if you look at the code owner's file, the syntax is exactly the same as what you do with git ignore.
Yep. Cool.
So if you go to git ignore, you can ignore. So there's you can set up at folder level. You can set it up at any way you want. You can set up multiple reviewers for certain files. certain folders, certain files under folders, any file with a certain pattern that exists anywhere. You can do a lot with that. You can, yeah, that's actually a very, very useful thing to have.
And then remind me, how does the publishing work if we use the CoBRA system to promote to production?
Well, first of all, you can with the push sync. So the final command that I showed for for syncing up your promoted code with AOMDB is very similar to the regular push command, where in that you can pass in options. Like if I do this, then it'll push and publish at the same time. So for QA and staging, you can do that. But for prod, you obviously don't want to be passing push automatically, so that you can push your changes into the EOMDB, but you confirm your changes in preview. Then you can run the same command passing the publish option so that you publish it automatically.
Wow, that's nice. Okay. Especially like with mobile first, we had so many, the list of files was exhaustive. It was huge.
Yeah, and you have to do it one by one, right click and so on. So yeah, I've been through that. That's
for human error.
there's a lot of potential for human error. I'm thinking that from now on, we're not going to have such big projects anymore in Method. I'm hoping that they don't ask us to make major changes. But if we did have something like this back before we had major projects, I think it would have saved a lot of headache. But I think Susan, did you ask how you require a review on these code owners?
Yeah, that's a cool feature. That would be
you can totally do that with the protected branch.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know we do that on the paid sites, I believe, today, right?
We have, on the paid sites, we have I think we have a minimum of approvals needed. So if I go to master, then it says required approve. That's all we have though. So this requires just one review before one approval before it can be merged. But we can also check this one where it says require approval from code owners before you can merge it. We can set this up today. Like this is something that can be used today, but we're gonna have to go through who's the code owner, and I don't really know. I think there have been changes to the paid sites that I haven't been following up on, but that's something that we can absolutely start.
In that, just so you guys know, if you're wondering who the code owners are for each project or each, I'm not sure what you call it, like Livefire versus JanRain versus Storywell versus
component, I guess.
Yeah, component, right, good point. Yeah, for each component, we have a document on SharePoint with each component's name and who's assigned to it as the sort of like the owner. So if you want to see that, just ping me in Teams and I'll send you that link. Actually, I could probably put it in the conversation right now.
Is that being used today? Like if somebody makes a change, does everyone go in that file and ask for reviews?
It's not being used today, but that's the purpose of setting it up, is because we want to start doing that in the future.
Oh,
so if you look at that link I sent you, hopefully it'll open for you guys. I just copied it from my browser window. See if it opens for you, Mason. So look at that second document, subject matter experts. If there's a particular component and you feel like you know that component really well, then feel free to contact me and I can add you as a subject matter expert for that component. Which means you'd have to be willing to do a code review, obviously.
Yeah. I think this is very. We could totally take this out into the GitHub repos.
Right.
Good. If we end up bringing in all the files, all the methods code into GitHub,
Right.
then we can set up something like this.
Yeah, but if anybody wants to be added as a subject matter expert, even though there's someone already there, it would be good to have two in for a lot of these components in case one person's on PTO and the other person can approve a pull request.
Yeah. We do need to be careful with that too, because that list will have to be maintained by someone as well. You don't want someone who's not here or who's not a subject matter expert or something. So, you know, someone who's changed teams or whatever.
Right.
Stay on, you know, on a code review and, you know, block a code review because, you know, they're not available anymore. So we can't merge it because of that. So that's something that we need to be maintained. So I don't think we should go too deep into that and make it so granular with who needs to approve, at least with the required approvals.
Yeah, right.
But,
yeah, some of these components are pretty detailed, like the story well. It's probably a good idea for the story well subject matter expert to have to approve any changes to the story well, right?
Yeah.
Things that are real difficult to maintain.
Yeah, I remember that. Like Isaac, he was the SME on the metrics code, and he had to put in big comments at the top of each file saying that if you want to modify this file, contact Isaac or something.
Yeah.
I reached out to him every time I made a change, but you know, that was not required. So you could make a change and, you know, without his knowledge and just push your changes, and he wouldn't know about it. There's a lot of code here also that. I think there was some stuff that I was a SME on, and there were changes made to it without me knowing about it as well. So that's a good list to have. Yeah.
Right.
Cool. I think we're getting close. I do want to set up another Espresso talk for going through the same process for code promotion that involves conflicts, where different people are working on the same file, and show how it can be handled with the 3 command line commands that I've provided, and just to show, because that would be a bit more realistic when working in method. And I will probably set up one for maybe next week or maybe the week after. But all this will again depend on all the side conversations, the parallel conversations about the CMS1, and see how quickly we're gonna advance with that process. So keep an eye out for another invite for Espresso Talk, maybe next week, next Friday, and I'll go demo a lot more of that. Yeah, so thanks everyone for coming. And if you have any questions, you can always reach out to me, email me, or ping me on Slack or even Teams. But all right, so that's the end of it. Thank you so much. I'm going to stop the recording.
Thanks, Mason.
Thanks, Mason.